Well, let's get started.
Let's get started. Okay. All right, folks, why don't we get started? Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're coming from. And welcome to yet another edition of ASQ's LED webinar series. This month, we're going to be tackling the thorny topic of online training. And I've got with me today Howard Zwick.
Howard Zwick, and I've been in manufacturing and operations in general for 30 plus years now, in a variety of different areas, and starting in supervision, quality, employee health and safety, some various risk management related things. And the last 6 plus years been in consulting in some of those areas and working with companies to make their operations better. And during the process of that time, Manny and I reconnected and have been working together and collaborating on lots of things, not just webinars, but professionally as well. So
pretty much I'm a CI guy. I know the difference between Lean and Six Sigma, and I'm ready to explain it to anyone at the drop of a hat. So what we're going to be doing today, actually, is sort of interesting. We're going to do a little bit of, not so much slides. I want to take you on a bit of a tour of what we're doing and show you what it's like with a learner or a peer or a business colleague like Howard's going to be. And one of the things we're going to do is compare and contrast PDCA and DMAIC and talk about if they're different or if they're the same. So I think that'll be pretty exciting. So here is some of what we're talking about here. I alluded to the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these various things, walking through the setup, PDCA versus DMAIC, Q&A, next steps.
So we just threw a few stats up there, but as we all know, the world has changed fundamentally since 2020 in a lot of different ways. And one of them is that people are doing a lot more online training. People are working a lot more remotely. And so all of these things come into play. And while more and more companies are dragging people back into the office, online meetings and training is certainly here to stay. And it offers a lot of great potential that we don't know we'll take advantage of. And while it's not so new anymore, it's still new, relatively speaking.
And I needed a new term, so we call it Starbucks view or Starbucks mode. And it's the idea that this is the view that you get when you only have a laptop and only the display.
Everything that you did in the classroom doesn't 100% translate. And so sometimes you have to make some changes, both in your technique and your processes and preparing people. So how can you set the expectations? How do you set the guidelines of things early on and communicate with people who are not going to be physically in front of you? So doing some of that ahead of time and in preparing your classes, and for some of you it's teaching internal company classes, and some of you it's teaching to an external world. So it's different things, but how do you prepare people to be ready and send up material so that people are ready for training?
One of the things you want to do is really plan your time well when you're online, right? I mean, this is all pre-work. We haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. This is that boring foundational stuff that's critical. The point is dead air, right? And so when you've got dead air is when nothing's happening. I mean, among YouTubers, it's well known that if you've got 5 seconds of dead air, people are clicking off. So pretty important to make sure that you understand your technology as well as understand how long it's really going to take you. And the funny thing about time, you could look at a section and say, oh, I think that's going to take about 10 minutes, and it's either much more or much less than that. It's rarely ever what you think it's going to be. So it's always a good idea to do a real dry run. I find that people tend to go way longer than you'd expect. So, what is your goal at the end of the day? When you're doing online training, let's just say right now that for lean training, which is what I do a lot of, Lean and Six Sigma, online training is by far a distant second place. Okay, the best way to retain, especially advanced concepts, is to have an experiential learning class, which means a lot of hands-on with exercises. So what we're talking about is really second best right now, right? But how to make online, which is a reality, the best that it can be. So one of the things that you want to do is start the day right. Okay, and you want to have a model, and I think that's important. We'll be talking about models a couple of times, but one of them for running meetings, effective meeting management, is the idea of spacer, right? The 6 things that you need to know. And the idea is that by going through them, when I get to the expectations piece, I actually write it all down, and then I'll refer back to it at the end of the day. The other piece is icebreakers, and there's lots of them, and that would be a great old webinar on its own, just getting examples of and demonstrating icebreakers to folks. But here's a few that I've used regularly.
What Manny's showing is his, what he calls the Starbucks view right here. So this picture right here is what Manny and I have done lots of, because he's been an early adopter of really trying out things, and some of them I think have been a tremendous help. And one of them, as you see, is actually pan tilt zoom camera, PTZ. And that's been wonderful because Manny loves to get up and walk on his whiteboard.
Here's a picture that I took and uploaded about 30 minutes ago. So if you take a look here on the left, you'll see I have a couple of different things. One is a 3 foot by 6 foot whiteboard. Above this, the snorkel looking thing on the wall is my Kaptivo whiteboard camera. Over here on the right, think of it as the command center right now, and there's actually 5 monitors, and you can see, so I could have 6, 7, 8 different windows open and monitor all the various things that I'm doing. Like there's different software in the background like OBS and different camera audio type because I don't have just one pan tilt zoom camera. I've got 2, and I've got another one on. I'm in this business, right? So it's a business expense. Whatever you do though, even if you're only going to train with 1 PC, still some things that you need to worry about, and it's good sound, lighting, cameras. I've noticed over the last year or so, people have been upgrading their cameras, and they're not using the crappy laptop cameras or the old thing that they had from before. Like, people are up in their game here. So if you're not one of them, you should jump on that bandwagon, because you can do an awful lot with just 1 PC, and you'll see it right here. PC1 is what I use. It's got the main presentation, it's got the camera recording, and I can also stream my Kaptivo at the same time. With 1 PC, you either get to stream the online whiteboard or your presentation. The second PC allows you to now have the 3 views on 1 screen. Me, my presentation, and the whiteboard I'm working on. That's the big difference. The third PC is that's part of the extreme part. That's when I'm recording and trying to cut it up later. So that's just for better image quality. Here, folks, here we are. We're training, and you can see I've got my pan tilt zoom camera. If I take a look over here to incorporate this is my dual monitor display cart that I typically use, but we're under construction right now, so we're making do. Here's my Kaptivo white. Getting back to this real quick, just wanted to tell you, just to finish the loop here, plan in the Six Sigma world is define, measure, analyze. Right? So think about problem statements and objectives. Think about collecting data that you can then analyze for root cause. All that's part of plan. So in the Six Sigma world, we're very worried about getting the problem statement and objective right, and really starting the project well. So improve is do, like I had mentioned before, and then this idea of control. A control plan has a monitoring plan and a response plan. It's not exactly the same as what Deming was talking about. In either case, you go from problem to countermeasure. PDCA focuses on making sure that getting the result right, and Six Sigma focuses on starting off right. So I ask you, is this an either-or situation, or can we actually do both? Doing the great upfront prep, as well as checking to make sure that we've achieved the results that we've gotten, and then making sure that we can sustain the gains that we've generated.
Every system is different. WebEx versus Zoom versus Google Meets. In WebEx terms, I put you on the stage.
Okay.
And it made you bigger, but not as big as the presentation, for instance. Now I've got you, for instance, depending on how it is, different sizes. So people may want to go different ways of looking at it and see different sizes of Manny.
So the other thing I'm going to do too, which I forgot to do, all these things I forget, I just chatted out my whiteboard link. So if you've got more than 1 display, okay, you certainly can follow along with the whiteboard. And then if you actually go to the URL for the whiteboard itself, let me just show you this little feature. You can activate, right? Do you see this OCR? and it'll take my chicken scratch and translate it into something that you can actually read. Oh, but wait, there's more, because you said you wanted languages. Well, you know, we train a lot in Spanish, and if you take a look, it will go through and work that way. It translates it. Here, let me switch back to this camera. All right, still following me. Good. I can change it if I want. I can let it not follow me and then walk out of frame. Now it's going to lock on me again, and I can zoom in and out with it. Let's see. So now you can see a little bit more of the bigger picture, including the display cart that's down. But here's what my setup looks like. You can see here's the snorkel with the Kaptivo camera. And I don't pay any hosting. It's like I bought the camera, and then it provides the URL and the technology to link it all up. If you take a look at this, there's some neat features, because I'm showing you what the OCR looks like. If you're looking at the Kaptivo through WebEx, you're seeing my OCR. But if you're viewing it like Howard is, you can change the OCR, change the language you want, anything you want. So I think I'm still in Spanish, right? Well, let's see. If I were to take the word eggs, let's just say, and put it in, let's just see how long it takes, right? I expect Kaptivo to translate it to huevos. And that's what I'm looking for. Did it switch yet, Howard?
I gotta move it
Has
to
it
the
switched
stage
yet?
here. I see
On
it
the
in
Kaptivo?
Spanish. I see huevos planos. Yes.
Huevos. Yeah, there you go, right? I mean, honestly, if we were to say, you know, something like banana, you know, you might expect to see plátano, and I didn't even write that very neatly, right? Let me know when that comes up. Let me see here. I'm trying to zoom out a little bit. So I don't know how well you can see this, folks, but I added this the other day in preparation for this event. I've got my whole big whiteboard, but if you notice, I only have a section of it lined out, okay, because I have notes and other things on the rest of it here. Like if I leave that rag there, of course, it'll show up on the Kaptivo screen, right? I think it's there at the bottom. Okay, I see it. So now, if I put it down here, below the line, then you'll see that it doesn't show up. Likewise, I can have my notes if I want. Instead of having to refer to a sheet of paper, I could have my notes on the side.
Made a comment on the chat saying, "Isn't this too much for one person?" To which, for some people, the answer I think is probably yes.
Yeah, could
But
be.
for those but it's also really cool and it's really good. So if you had to pick one of these technologies that you're doing, which one would you do as the first step for people to try?
Oh, easy. Good lighting and good sound. So here, I'm running an external microphone. Let's see. All right, it's the lavalier mic. And I don't know how well you can see this. Let me zoom out a little bit. I mean, the camera's fancy. It's a couple $100. It's not that big a deal. You're spending good money on a 4K webcam. $200 is not a lot. But you can see I've got some lights there. I also have, if you will, more lights right around the room. I have 4 of them that shine up to the ceiling. So again, this is a setup that's developed over time, right? I bought a ring light. I had my iPhone going through it, and then, you know, it just developed from there. So good lighting, good sound, good camera. That anyone can do.
How about like if you were just working on a whiteboard, the pan tilt zoom camera is about how much?
Okay, so that's $200. It's in the presentation. We'll get to it. It's a tiny. It's an OBSBot, they call it, or OBSBot. The tiny 4K. And actually, I just put down my deposit on a tiny 4K too, because it's got new features.
So why don't we go back to from presenter mode, we'll call it, to presentation mode.
Right. I'm going to switch cameras again. And Howard, I'll rely on you to distract everyone while.
Yeah. Well, you know, as people in the camera thing here, to me, when Manny started getting the pan tilt zoom, it was a real game changer in being able to watch a presentation that you can see both. You can see the screen, and having someone just write on the whiteboard or whatever, it added to more of a classroom experience. And I think when you start combining different aspects of it, the Kaptivo is a nice tool from my experience with it, because you can see the screen very effectively with only a couple second delay. And the combination of watching someone write it on the board plus seeing the screen really well has worked out very effectively, I think, for some of the training that Manny has done, because it isn't just a talking head anymore. It's now an active sort of representation closer to the classroom.
Well, it's funny, Howard. I was, as part of this, right? We were practicing as we always do. And I was saying, boy, if only I had more time, I would have pulled up like where we were 3 years ago, pre-pandemic, in terms of technology and where we are today. It's a big difference.
Technology and approach, I think, are really important to different things. And not everyone is going to go out and buy a pan tilt zoom camera and set up their office this way. So I think you have to do both. I think there's a combination of both. And one of those is, group exercises for a lot of us are a great way of getting people to experientially learn things and introduce concepts and actually do things. And when you don't have a group that's physically there, how do you do it? And so it's how do you apply and really translate some of these tools that sim group exercises you may have done into a virtual world using the whiteboard that's built into either Zoom, for instance, or using Microsoft Whiteboard is just one of those ways. But it's rethinking your sims into a virtual world.
Absolutely. And that's sort of the point here. I mean, when you're live, there's a lot of things you can do. You could even do the online Muda walks, which we want to talk about. Things that I've had to develop because I was frustrated. I mean, I wrote somewhere in one of my earlier newsletter articles, my goal as a trainer and consultant is not to stare at the unblinking eye of a camera all day while training online, right? That's not my goal. Nobody likes it. Nobody, not the instructor, not the people. So instead, here are some of the things you can do. One of them is you can show some video, which we will in a moment. And then there's this idea of the group discussions. And unfortunately, unless you can actually get video of what people are doing, or you can do some mind mapping or, basic process mapping, you have a lot of discussions. So there are some ideas there. Are these idea of the online Muda walks. Okay, there's also another set of playlists that are the videos that I use when I'm in training. Most of them are less than 10 minutes long and funny. And then there's some other stuff there too, right? Like we're building our web store and there's some demos of products there. But this is the one that I'm most interested in. And it's just people working. We said that we would take a look at just one of these short ones here. And so for instance, right, I was recently doing a bunch of work at a bagel factory and wanted to show you just this simple video. So these are available. They're public playlists. Anybody can access these. And if you're a trainer, the best thing to do would be to film your own people or the people that you're talking to in their work environment. This would be like the next best thing. So here, just take a look at this. And I think sound doesn't really matter. There's no real sound. What I would do is show this to people.
You can utilize that type of video and still have good experiences with the group. I know I personally I've done walk-arounds with safety committees before from different states, far away, and it's a tool. Whether you do it live streaming or whether you use these type of videos, it's a great. You don't have to be in the same place anymore. In fact, I'm planning for an upcoming meeting with a big group of people. We're going to do some video and we're going to do a walk around and talk about how to make improvements in those types of areas.
So for anybody who wants to know a little bit more, here's a little bit more hard information. Are there questions, Howard? I mean, we certainly can do that, but here are there's different tools. We didn't get a chance to show the Microsoft Whiteboard or the WebEx Whiteboard and how you can use that as well. A lot of you are familiar with it. I'm willing to bet that almost nobody uses it. That's been my experience with online training. People are aware of it, but they don't use it. So keep that in mind. Kaptivo, it's like I forget. I think I bought it on eBay for $300. Normally $400, but again, it's my business, so I figured it was a business expense. This Logitech 920, it's about $35 on eBay. Okay, maybe less. Probably got one laying around.
Yeah, but and someone online has said someone's using Microsoft Teams for their remote stuff. They're also using a micro.com enterprise, which I guess is probably a whiteboard. I haven't checked that link out yet, but someone put that in the links in the chat. So there's lots of different tools out there for whiteboards. And we recently did a sim using the Zoom whiteboard as a group exercise. It worked pretty well. That's, again, it would be more ideal to be in person, but the reality is that there are tools out there, whether it's any of these that are free or built into your systems. Use them for benefit to try and recreate the experience, but more importantly, recreate a positive experience for your trainers to get your trainees to get them involved.
I started out, there's, we didn't really talk about the evolution so much, but the Rocketbook Snapcast beacons are about $15 a piece. And what's neat about them, I still carry them with me because you can use them on the road. You could be working at any whiteboard anywhere. I mean, there are these, I have it set right here. These beacons, they're these 4 targets, if you will, and you stick them in the corners of your whiteboard. Using the Rocketbook app, you can take a picture and it automatically corrects for skew. It'll do a OCR and you can or a URL. So there's lots of ways to do this stuff. I've been through a lot of them. This is what I'm using and finds works for me right now. Thoughts, questions? Did I just?
So, well, actually, we have one question from someone online and said, currently developing some self-led training for my organization. I won't be there to guide any of the trainees through the activity simulations. Any other tips for making that more interactive over and above the videos and quiz questions?
Make it meaningful for people. I mean, right? Incorporate their experiences.
Let's see. So you have to create training. I think demonstrating sometimes. I think asking people to make their own videos and maybe making it more interactive for them to create a video of the results of what they've been working on or doing or seeing.
It's a great idea to get people to videotape their stuff ahead of time. That is smart, but to get them to edit it, to get out all the junk. You can get sick when you're recording stuff on your iPhone because like people turn it on and then like they're just moving around weirdly. Just practice things before you try them. That's all.
So someone asked online group exercises, and actually, if you go back to the presentation, mind mapping is one thing we had in one of our slides in the presentation coming up right here. So this is a group exercise, right? You can recreate your mind maps that you might be doing in person, and so that's not necessarily the group training and sort of educational thing, but it's a real life activity that you can do pretty effectively on using a whiteboard, because especially on these whiteboards, multiple people can actually type at the same time. So what you might have done on Post-it notes before, essentially could be Post-it notes of different people typing on a whiteboard.
Let's just demonstrate the whiteboard real quick.
Lean squares exercise using the whiteboard, because it's a whole lot easier to have done what we would have done in the lean squares exercise to teach people really a process flow. Doing it with paper on a desk is a whole lot easier to have the rules followed. Now that we had on the slides a couple different group exercises, some of which we've perhaps done and some of which we think would work out fine on a group exercise.
Are you guys looking at the whiteboard in WebEx?
Yes, I see I see a whiteboard right now.
Okay, and you're actually seeing things on it. So because I'm drawing on it, I believe that you guys can do it too. So anybody that's interested, feel free to join in.
Yeah,
I haven't really used the WebEx whiteboard yet, so
okay.
I don't really.
I can draw, but I don't think everyone else can draw.
Well, WebEx wouldn't be my first choice anyway. Somebody's moving that around too. Okay. When you get people that are peers, this is a webinar, so most people are muted. But when you're in a meeting, it's you can share better. But Dave, were you moving something around? Is that what you're doing?
I think I was. I was trying to I found the pen tool and I was trying to use it and just
I see a circle.
I just created a square in the circle, Manny.
Yeah, what I find is like when we do what we call the lean squares exercise, it's easier just usually to copy and paste. So, you can use whatever tools you have, just make sure you know how to use them. One of the worst things is, and I've done this plenty of times, like I can't show you what I want, or it's not reacting the way I expect.
Breakout rooms is another thing that I think you can use very effectively to create small groups. and they're throughout there, and there are some positives and negatives. Breaks out and gives you an opportunity to have those small groups, and the problem becomes monitoring them. Wrangling them back in is easy, because actually it's easier in these things, because you can, as the host, you can put a timer on it. Someone just pointed out that not everything that we do or talking about carries over if you're viewing on the phone, and that is not entirely surprising, because it actually, it's a good point. It's a very good point, because part of the, I think, requirements for good online training is teaching to the tools that people have, but that also sometimes means you have to set a requirement for people to have the right tool. And
Right.
it's not unreasonable to tell people this training is only designed to work on a laptop or a computer, not necessarily a laptop, but computer. And you need to have a microphone, you need to have a webcam. And that is something that we do tell people up front when going into training, is that that's a requirement.
Oh boy, you're not kidding. I'll tell you, when I'm training, listen, I understand people that, like, they're eating, they get tired, somebody comes in and talks to them. I tell folks, look, shut off your camera all you want. I don't care. Do me a favor, look around, and if not many people have it on, turn yours on, because I worked with a company that was thought they were smart, and before the pandemic, they bought computers that didn't have webcams. You can imagine talking to 16 people, and I'm the only face I see.
Yep. So, man, we're down to the last couple of minutes here, and I'll give you some other questions that have come up. When would you draw the line between delivering online learning for exercises versus delivering physical classroom exercises? Question mark. Says, like, stats exercises versus mappings or root cause analysis.
Oh, that's all fair game for online, especially if people are bringing their own examples. I've done that. I mean, it's never as good. The problem is, somebody mentioned Teams earlier. Teams channels is the problem with online learning. If you've got Teams channels, it's very difficult to keep people from getting sucked into that. Even when you're in training, even with companies, I don't know if you've seen this, they'll post, "I'm in training all day," and people still hammer them on the Teams channels.
We have 150 people online. I'm sure that there's a portion of them, that 150, that are also doing something else for work things. I would much rather do training in person, have the engagement. I don't like webinar training, because you can't see people. From an online training standpoint, having people on camera, I want to see the feedback.
When I know I'm talking to somebody at the other end and they're asking questions, it's huge. So somebody asked a question earlier, what's Manny's limit? I'll tell you what, I don't do Greenbelt online. Greenbelt is 80 hours. The way I do it is there's coaching and a project involved, right? You bring a project to class, you finish it. The report out is about a month after the class ends. Okay, so that doesn't work online. Now, Yellow Belt, 16 hours, that's setting people up. It walks them through problem statement, objective, the measure, and then some basic analyze, root cause analysis type stuff. That to me is the big difference. So do Yellow Belt, which is more overview versus completing a project online. And it can be done. I've trained it, but it's painful for everyone. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Can you imagine 8? I by the way, really will complain loudly and probably won't do more than 4 hours in a day anymore of online training. I'll do it with 2 different groups, but I won't subject anyone else to 4 hours. So a lot of times I'll do that with an AM session and a PM session. But that's usually more overview or root cause analysis or, 16-hour problem solving type stuff.
Yep. So
anyway,
questions? Another question that came up was, well, combine, I'll say it. Do you ever use Zoom for remote training? And then what's your preferred platform for remote training? Because it sounds like we don't like WebEx. I'll answer that, and that is that.
Did I give that impression? I'm so
the answer
sorry.
is I don't like WebEx. I'll flat out say that it's one of my least preferred. Zoom actually is, I think, one of the better ones. And yes, I have used Zoom for many training sessions before. I've done Google Meets, Teams. I'm not as thrilled with Teams either, but they all work, including WebEx. It's just WebEx is often my least preferred of those major platforms.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I use Google Meet, 1, because it's cheap, 2, because you don't need to download any software, and 3, because when you record it, it integrates into Google Drive. So I don't go looking for or having to download any of these. I mean, recording files without trying can be 500 meg, or gigabytes. They're huge. So I like Google Meet for all those reasons, and it's simple. When you're presenting and sharing a screen, you don't see the same thing as everybody else.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like the least about WebEx actually is that when you are a presenter, you see so little. I'm not the presenter today, so I can easily monitor the chat, but you can't. It's hard when you're only a single person to do both. WebEx makes it very difficult, where Zoom and Meet you can do a lot easier.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Manny, I'm monitoring the chats, and you're getting lots of thank yous. So.
Yep.
Oh, great. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. You know, always try to make sure that somebody learns something, even if it's not what to do, right? So maybe this is too much for you, but believe me, I mean, I started with baby steps.
Yeah.
You know, and I just wanted to get better because, like I said, I wanted to be the choice for online training, even though I don't like it. Go figure.
But I think in the end, part of the answer is all the technology stuff is cool, but even if you're just doing online training without the technology, you can still make it better by thinking about some of the things we talked about today.
So I said, hey, thanks for the peek behind the curtain. It's a good thing they didn't go see the rat's nest behind the monitors because I've been working on that. And it's better than it was, but it's still cords, cables, connectors, boxes.
So,
anyway, all right, folks. So here ends another webinar.